You guys have already played 4 games, and the other team, this will be their opening day on Friday.
Yeah, you don't see that very often. And we were talking in here. At one time, I think there might have been some Ivy League parameters on games and things like that. But this is great. I've played Penn before. They're a competitive team. They're a regional team. John knows what he's doing. This is one of the more experienced teams that we're going to see. They've got older guys. They return a lot. But it is unusual that you're 4 games deep and this is their first time playing. And they'll be down here tonight, and we'll give them the field to practice, and they will be prepared and they will be ready to go, whether they played or not. I know this program well enough to understand that they have a complete understanding of what they're doing. They play really good baseball, and it's an older team that has been in this sort of environment. So it is unusual, but when you're looking at the age of the team and the experience and the quality, they're going to be just fine.
How do you value these opening early in the season? I mean, I know JMU was not large last year. Penn, I think, has won the Ivy the last 2 years. They don't, like, on paper, they don't look like the toughest teams, but they're teams that have accomplished a lot in their area. I guess, how do you view scheduling in that way?
Well, these are quality teams, and that helps your schedule. And you want to have quality opponents. I like to be at home. I talk about the fan experience here and having the best fans in the world. I want to give them an opportunity here to play. And clearly the weather here, when you go north of here and you look at what's going on in the mid-Atlantic and the middle part of the country in general, we're fortunate that we're going to have a chance to actually play in good conditions. There aren't many places in the country this weekend when you look at the map that are conducive for baseball, and we're one of them. So having teams that need to escape a little bit and come down, they're quality programs, they're run by good men. That's what I look for. And then you can't always predict. I'm working on 2028 right now. So the thought being home on the weekends, I thought that USF trip and the JU trip gets us on the road. And we went Monday afternoon to Tampa. So I wanted Tuesday to almost feel like a Friday, if that makes any sense, where we got in the day before. You wake up, you have to kind of sit tight for a while, and then you play an evening game. So having those two, I built those in. So we got a little road experience, even though we're home on the front end weekends, which I think is great. I like it. It lets the guys get into a little rhythm at home. I think the crowd, look at the crowds we had the last series. I mean, fantastic. Maybe the most we've ever had for a 2-game series. I don't know if that was true. Maybe a non-Miami series or something I heard. So all of that is positive stuff for me, and that's how I like to build it. Now, there are some things coming up in future years where I have a trip planned that I think does help the program overall. So you'll see those things coming later. But in this situation and building it a couple of years ago, these are really quality opponents, and we're at home, and it lets us at least get into a routine at home. And then the Tuesdays on the road, I thought that gave us a taste of the road environment too.
Coach, all 3 of your starters last week were on a pitch count. I just wanted to ask you, what does the ramp up for them look like? When do you think they're probably going to be at 100%? And at the same time, how important is it having the quality of arms to go out and get 12, 15 outs in some of these games?
Well, you try to go into the first weekend with the same pitch count in a game that they ended their scrimmage setting with. So we ended at 75, and Micah did a fantastic job building this thing out. And we probably start throwing bullpens earlier than some teams and start live pitcher, catcher, hitter earlier than some teams, but we slow it down, and it's a longer process. So how we got to the guys throwing 75 pitches, it's by design. And then we stayed at 75 in the game. And then you could probably add 10 or so, 15. I will say the work involved in those pitches does impact the pitch count. If you're dealing with base runners and you're in relief type, self-contained relief situations as a starter, the intensity and the stress level mounts a little bit. So there's different ways that you can get to 50 pitches or 75, or quite frankly, 20. Like if you're in a jam in the first inning, the intensity of the first 15 or 20 may be more than what we saw in some of the longer outings last weekend. So we have to feel it out, but you usually move in a 15 pitch increment, looking at the overall feel and how the game evolved and how they got to a certain number.
Coach, obviously, opening weekend has a ton of energy coming into it. Are you worried at all about a regression going into the second weekend of the series? There's not as much like necessarily excitement that the baseball season's here.
Not really. Honestly, I feel like this group likes to play and compete, and you can watch the way they carry themselves, whether it was the South Florida game or the 3 games on opening weekend. I think there's that desire to perform and deliver. And when you have that, I think the calendar is a distant secondary factor in the equation to how they perform. And they're being pressed. Like everybody on that field has something they're fighting for. Getting in the lineup, staying in the lineup, improving their personal situation for professional baseball down the road. Everybody on that field is fighting for something. And so that layer is a really good layer. And I think it does keep everybody on their toes and keeps them very focused. And regardless of opening day or the second weekend, or I feel like the focal point for these guys is competing and playing and performing at a very high level. So then what's going on around you becomes not as important.
Hi, good morning, Coach. We saw several different players, I guess, get at bats over this past weekend. And I was wondering, how often do you guys see yourselves, rotating players in and out of the lineup this weekend?
Yeah, you have to let the game dictate those opportunities. Some of it's strategic, some of it is for repetition, some of it's based on health, and we're not fully healthy. So there are guys that you would probably expect to get some ABs that may not. So it's based on the game scenario, number one, like what puts the team in the best position. And if there's things we need to do to improve as the game goes on, we'll do it. And then if there's opportunities in certain games to give guys a look and a chance and some reps, then we'll do that too. But the first priority in this is to make sure we're doing what we think is best at that moment to position the team to win. And then as the game evolves, you have opportunities to maneuver things in a couple different fashions. So we'll just have to feel it out. But with the depth of the team and the athleticism, we do have a lot of options, I would say, on the field. And we clearly have pitching depth. And we just hope that everybody stays healthy so you continue to have the options in the depth.
Coach, you've kind of talked about him this season, but Alex Lodis, especially in the field, but at the plate after 0-5 on opening day, he's been on a tear with multi-hit games. Talk about what he's been able to do and kind of adjust after that kind of tough day at the dish at the opening day and just where you see him going.
Well, you watch the progression and understanding of his swing and what he needed to do to maximize his strengths. And he's so athletic and so strong. And the ball jumps off his bat. You're looking at the exit velocities. Even the other night, I mean, one of his lineouts was 108 miles an hour, I think. And there's just explosiveness in there. The hands are very strong. And if you watched our preseason and his 30 at-bats, you're not going to find a better 30 at-bats anywhere in the country. He's hitting balls out down the right field line, right center field. So I felt terrible for him that opening day. And their right-handed pitcher was really good. That guy was talented, and he had a good breaking ball. And it was just one of those things I think many of our guys still are probably trying to do a little much at times at the plate and just have to settle. But it's nice that we're seeing Lodis perform in the range of ways that we saw it in the preseason. And I think you look to the back half of last year, you're starting to see true elite type talent and capabilities. And if you revisited his first 2 or 3 weeks of last season, it was difficult. And again, these guys press, like there's a lot on their mind and on their plate and ahead of them. And it's easy for us to sit there and watch and, hey, don't try to do too much and like stay within yourself. But when you walk out there in this arena with what's at stake for you, it's harder to do that than when we're sitting here watching or trying to explain and getting them to breathe and getting them to calm down. So it's nice to see it, and the sky's the limit for him. The plays he's made, the way he comes and gets the ball, the play he made to end the game Tuesday night up the middle to spin and Miles picking it. You just start to see his talents on display, and that's fun for everybody.
I'm sure y'all want to be a little wary of just how much you're going to want him to catch over the long haul of the season. Do you think could Jackson catch this weekend at least a little bit, or what's the timeline for that?
He's in better shape to do that. So he took in and out and ran around and did all this stuff. He should be available. We'll know after we get through today, like how he is. But again, probably could have caught Kurt. And when you have three guys that can go out there and blend in, like we just caught a freshman, and you would never have known that Hunter Carnes, it was just seamless how well he did. And you've seen Nate behind the plate and how strong he is. You see how Carnes handles the bat. And Jackson West, poor guy, of all the players in the lineup, he's probably had as many quality at bats and just driven balls to center field with not much to show for it. So that combination allows us to not rush when somebody's beat up. And this is going to happen to other guys. But when you have the depth and the athleticism to cover, then you have a luxury of not forcing people out there when they may not be quite 100%. But he'll be out there, and the plan is for him to be out there this weekend. Now, when and why, then you get to do some more strategic planning for what lineup matchups may work best. I think they're going right, left, starting. So you do have that option too. When everybody's healthy, you have more buttons to push, even if those buttons are pushed to write that initial lineup out. But he's on his way back.
Hudson had to come out of the game on Sunday. Just do you know where he's at this point?
Yeah, it's just a mid-body injury. He's going to be down for a couple weeks. It's not a serious issue, but he's down. And these things take time, and you don't want it to piggyback into something else. So we'll slowly work him back in there. Poor guy had worked so hard and was in a good spot. Unfortunate, but these are some of the things that happen in this game. And I knew when he threw one of those pitches that something was off, not an arm thing. So he'll be back.
It seems like I didn't go through it personally, but it seems like the jump, the high school to college hitting jump is pretty significant. How do you guys who you know you're going to count on over the long haul, who might not be immediately clicking right away, I guess, how do you work with them to kind of keep them growing and help adjust to this level?
We have two distinct areas that we try to get right. The swing part, each swing is very unique. Like if you're talking about Miles Bailey, Max Williams, Jackson West, Gage Harrelson, just look at the lefties. All of them have come into this with different mechanical facets to the swing. So with our video, when it's right, we try to show them things that we think help them with their swing. Then you go to the hitting side, which is, how well are we timing and tracking pitches? What are we actually swinging at? What are we not swinging at? What does this look like in less than 2 strike counts? What does this look like in 2 strike counts? What does this look like versus right-handed pitching, left-handed pitching, some velocity, secondary pitches? So we bounce back and forth between what do we need to do swing-wise with each guy, and then what do we need to do from a hitting philosophical at-bat management perspective. Then you blend those, and you hope that when you do, you have a really competitive group. And we have not been that yet offensively. It has not been complete yet. Seen flashes of it. The transition from high school to this is the biggest jump you'll make. People talk about going from A ball to AA being the biggest jump in professional baseball, because that things start to really condense. I think the high school to college is far more difficult than that. So anytime you have freshmen that go out there, we talked about it, they haven't seen the consistency of stuff and command of stuff, and then knowledge of how to try to get you out. These teams, I mean, Penn knows when they come in here how they're going to try to get you out. And then on top of that, if they have pitchers that they feel like out of the bullpen are very good candidates to actually strike you out, that's who you're going to see. So it's the biggest challenge for these guys, no question. And what they swing at, what they take, confidence, all of those things, the crowd, the game situation. It's a fire hose beverage situation for some of these guys. It's coming at them hard and heavy. And the young guys we are running out are extremely talented athletes. We're trying to do our best to move them and mold them into, advanced college hitters versus very advanced and talented high school players.
Coach, following up on that, you mentioned something really interesting over the weekend about learning Wes Mendez and how he needs to fire that fastball low in the zone. With some of these transfers and the freshmen, are you still learning these guys and what makes them tick? Obviously, for them, they have to learn the game, but are you also still just learning how to coach them? And kind of how long of that process does it take a coaching staff to almost understand their own players?
Yes, I'm still learning them. As much as we would like to grab all the data and the feels that we had in the fall and the preseason, the game is different, and how they react to things in the game is different. When do you try to make comments and corrections? Sometimes you see a frustrated player coming off the field. In this setting, if something went awry for them in the competition, I have to try to figure out when is the right time to A, try to correct, B, try to lift up, C, let it ride, D, all of the above. Like, you have to kind of pick the moments and play off of what you feel is happening in the games. So I would say when you're 12 to 15 games in, you're starting to learn a little bit more about their response in game. There's the preseason, there's the season, and then there's the postseason. And sometimes you see different responses in those segments of the year. And I don't have an answer for why that is. I will tell you, in my 25 years of it, I have seen it. And then you learn each player. Some guys may need instant, like coming into the dugout help, if you're talking just in game. Some guys you may need to privately go back behind and try to not have a conversation in front of the other players. That's the tricky part. And you have to go on your feel and try to learn the guys, and you're around the guys so much, you hope you have a pretty good sense of them and what works for them. And the older guys that you've been around for a couple of years might be different than some of the freshmen that are experiencing this for the first time. And I'm experiencing their reaction for the first time. So that's the essence of the interpersonal relationship with the in-game management and coaching. And I do think after 3 or 4 weeks, you have a pretty good sense of it.
It feels like a lot of the teams' plans against Jamie is to jump on the fastball early. Just with that, how important is it for him? How big is it for him to be able to have different variations of the fastball and change the shape with it pretty consistently?
Yeah, he's got the two different things. And he'll tell Micah in game, he's like, I think this is what I need to go with. And even the intent to jump and ambush, it still can be a really tough fastball to ambush. And I think last Friday, they were trying to do it, but the movement and the velocity and the profile, it's hard to square up. So he almost got himself some quick outs, a lot of little ground balls. As they tried to ambush, he was kind of deflecting the ambush into weak contact. So that's great. Micah and Jamie need, or any of the guys, need to really feel when somebody's on that fastball, and then it might not be the right pitch at that point. And you may have to open, with your slider, with your changeup as a first pitch of an at bat if you feel like you're being really damaged and threatened early in the counts. That's the beauty of the two secondary pitches. It's not just that you may get a pretty good slider, you may also get a good changeup. So I talk about the offensive playbook, the pitching playbook. When it's open, it's fun. And Micah has a great sense of timing. Like he can calibrate and feel when they seem to be on something. So you may see him stick with a pitch for 3 or 4 pitches, but you also may see one pitch and then instantly switch to something else. So that's just the pitching and in-game management that he does a great job. And again, he knows the guys and he knows the stuff. And then you have to have the art of in-game coaching. And once you start the competition, you may have to get the plan B. And if we all feel like that they're on it and ambushing and lining up with that fastball, then clearly we're going to have to shift a little bit. But his fastball is so unique that even when you feel like people sometimes may be timing it, it's still tough to square up. So that's why he's got a chance to be one of the best in the game.
Coach, you mentioned the weather earlier. It's going to be pretty cold this weekend, possibly into the 30s. Does that change at all? Pitch count or defensively, how you guys line up, or just when do you guys get people up in the bullpen at all?
Well, I try to radio down, and we have 3 different levels of preparation in the bullpen, and I try to be in these situations maybe a little bit further ahead of it. And, sometimes you're dealing with 2 guys that may be at different points in their warm-up process based on where we are in the lineup. Or when I look 4 or 5 or 6 hitters ahead, you may have guys that you would like to inject for this group of hitters, and then there may be somebody deeper. So trying to maybe stay a tick ahead of that to give those guys in the bullpen a chance. I need to do a better job of giving preparation for somebody that may pinch hit. And I haven't probably given them enough notice in some respects. And they always feel like they rush. Like it happened to Estes the other day. It seemed like, oh, okay, that's enough. Let's get him in there, Lodis, and then let's get Sheffield in there. But there's so many things you're thinking of. They need to have an understanding too. Like Estes, I'm like, you have as much time as you want. Please take your time. Do whatever you would have done on deck. The game will wait for you. Like we have that option. So them understanding what they can utilize in terms of the timing of their entrance to the game and me helping them along, whether it's bullpen, pinch hit, go to play defense. And I tell them mentally, I can only do so much. I can't think for all of the guys that are not in the game. So think about what position you've played, where we are in the lineup, what is the score, how could we use you? If I catch you off guard with that, that's your fault. Now, giving you enough notice, I need to stay ahead of that, especially in conditions like we're going to see Friday night.